the scam of work-life balance and who is laughing at you if you're so convinced about this work-life balance. Today, we want to talk to you about work-life balance. You know, it's a very broad topic that impacts everyone. For entrepreneurcorner.com, my audience normally are entrepreneurs. But I think this episode is going to attract literally everyone. It's good for entrepreneurs to understand this as well. And a couple of things are important to understand. And before I get into introduction and we get into our debate, this is going to be a debate. I didn't even know if it was going to be a debate. This episode, I should say, I don't know which one of the people who are here are going to agree with me or disagree with me. But I think the most important thing to get into this is to understand what the heck is work-life balance. Like, what is work-life balance? What is work-life balance? So, are we saying that work is not life? So I gotta balance the two? Or are we saying, no, the thing I do to make money, to make a living, I like to separate it from my personal things. That's why I don't like the name. I get that. I want to have a separation of this thing I do for a living. I gotta pay the bills. Yes, I like it. I never said I didn't like it, but I gotta pay the bills as well, because most jobs, this is how the world works. You gotta make money, pay the bills, you know, go on vacation, buy a car, buy a house, whatever. And then you got life. This is why I don't like this, and it just sounds ridiculous. Then you got life, which is when I have time to watch Netflix, hang out with my family, contact my friends, exercise, eat, I don't know, run errands, go grocery shopping, watch some more Netflix, watch some more YouTube. So my fundamental issue with work-life balance is that this thing, the name is just weird. It just seems like, first of all, the other thing is not life, the other thing is not work, where actually both could be, depending on how you think about it. Second, the word balance in there is, I feel like if balance is an issue, it's an individual issue. Right? If the person is not enjoying their work, they shouldn't be doing that job. If it's just meant to separate the two, it's impossible. Why can't we have another guest joining us? Why can't people having a job or something they do for work be there and be part of their life? So I'll give some examples and then we'll go into our co-hosts. I haven't even introduced myself yet because I don't. It's like this is like such a topic. I don't even think it matters right now. Our introduction doesn't even matter. The idea is, I'm gonna tell you my perspective because I have only my perspective. I don't have somebody else's perspective. They can talk about their perspective. I have been an employee, and then for half of my working life, I was an employee. For the other half so far, I've been an employer. Both instances, I did not feel this concept. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't understand work-life balance. Why? Because when I was an employee, obviously I worked a lot less. I expect my employees to work a lot less. They're not the business owner. Why should they work as much as me? That makes no sense. So that's just a stupid argument. So if that was your argument, you're an entrepreneur and that's the argument you make in your head or with your employees, that's kind of dumb. That means low IQ. They don't have to work as much as you. It's just they're not business owners. But when I was an employee, I worked less, but this concept wasn't there. So I'll tell you, for example, I don't remember ever complaining to say, hey, yeah, you know what? I gotta run home because I gotta find my balance. I would like figure out a job that's got the balance I need. That it was part of the balance. It was part of the balance of life. The job and the work was part of the balance. Without it, there would be no balance. Then when I became an entrepreneur, my entire life is work. Believe it or not, this is work for me. I immensely enjoy making content. And I always joke, because like, guys, this is just the fun part of the thing, but like it's all fun for me. Get up between 4 to 5 a.m., somewhere around there, and I'm usually done, I don't know, anywhere between 4 to 7 p.m. So I usually do my 12 hours, 7 days a week. I still see my family. I still hang out with my friends. I still go eat out. I still exercise every day. I go on vacation. I go on vacation, even though I force some of our employees, like literally we have to tell our employees and go on vacation every quarter. I go on vacation more than some of them, not because I'm an asshole employer or CEO, just because I have my routine every quarter. I have my vacation. I do all of that. So I have my work. I have my life. But then the bigger picture for me in life is, what am I trying to accomplish? I'm optimizing 100% of my time on that. What I'm trying to accomplish is I am trying to accomplish growing my businesses and their impact and the people we serve. That is my focus from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep. When I go on vacation, that's what I'm thinking about. When I go to dinner, that's what I'm thinking about. When I make a friend, I'm like, how can they help what I'm trying to do? So that's now, that is the balance I have created for my life. Now, if somebody wants to say, hey, my balance is I want to raise 10 kids, good. Then the life should be organized differently. I just don't like the fact that people just try to take this and say that, oh, like, yeah, I'm working here, that there's no work-life balance. No, it's your fault. Why did you go work that over there? If you wanted that balance, don't go work there. Go work somewhere else that gives you that balance. Or don't work at all. Don't work at all. Because, especially in the Western world, you could literally not work and still make money, pay the bills. Oh, wait, you wanted that fancy boat. Okay, then you got to optimize for that. Do you want to optimize for the fancy boat you want to buy eventually? Or you want to optimize for, I just want to mostly watch Netflix. Now, one more thing. And this was very interesting. So they've done a lot of research about this into happiness. And it's a very subjective, obviously self-reported ranking happiness. And when they do studies, majority of studies have demonstrated that individuals who are the busiest, gainfully employed, and have multiple different things going on in their life are way happier than people they may even be independently wealthy. But the minute they don't have enough to do is the minute people get depressed and are unhappy. So it even says like we're creatures, we're just got to be doing something. I don't know anyone who is not doing anything. Even people who are not doing anything, they're thinking about how I get out of this doing nothing and do something. This is just human nature. You want to be happy, you got to be doing something. So this balance thing kind of makes this whole argument a little bit weird. And now I'll tell you about the scam. This is where this came from. And a lot of people don't realize it. Back in 1800s, a lot of things go back to the Industrial Revolution where people started to need. Actually, that's not true. You go back like 2,000 years ago. Who made the pyramids? It wasn't the kings. Now, I have a more knowledge of the Industrial Revolution, and there's more history because it's more recent, documented history. And the reason this was all brought up and work-life balance, and they gave specific time for breakfast, specific time for lunch, specific time for go home, was to condition people like Pavlovian dogs. In fact, the guy who did this had studied Pavlovian psychology. And that was like one of his things. So, and people lose that concept. I was like, this is where it came from. And they did this. Why would they do that? Why is this a scam? Why, like, before you become a keyboard warrior and try to type and be like, oh, conspiracy. Yes, conspiracy. No. You don't understand that people who are on the top, of course, they want to control the masses. And as a way to control, you dictate everything they do. You work, you eat, go watch TV, go work-life balance, then come back. Why? Because when you do that, you're stuck in this loop forever. And remember, back in the day, it was factory work. You're stuck in that loop. You cannot escape. They don't want you to think, because if you think you're going to become the factory owner, no, I'm the factory owner. I don't want you to be the factory owner. You just go through this process until the day you die. That's why I think it's a lot more liberating understanding this concept and how this was a scam. It's still there, by the way. There's there's different organizations, obviously. And liberating yourself, knowing that, hey, if I have a job, it's by choice. If I want to take a Tuesday off, I take a Tuesday off. I'll hopefully have a job that allows you to do that. Maybe I want to work on a Sunday. Who cares? Like, you know what? My friends are not around. Okay, then maybe I'm just going to work. I feel like working today. I'm just going to work. I want to take Wednesday off. It's just so much liberating. You'll become so much more happier to optimize for the right things. If you're optimizing for vacation, then just be on vacation all the time, right? Find a job that allows you to be always on vacation. There is actual jobs and professions, or you could create your own business that allows you to do that. You could literally be a flight attendant. You're literally on vacation all the time if you organize your shifts properly, and depending on what kind of airline. Obviously, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there's things you could do to allow you to do that. Guys, I want to get my thoughts and then see what you guys have to say. Now, for those of you who've never watched any of these, introduction. My name is Beruz Momeni, CEO and founder here at entrepreneurcorner.com. Ranza is our director of consulting at one of my other businesses, BMO. Lindsay is our operations manager at BMO. Lulu is our people and culture assistant at BMO. And Veronica is our associate manager of consulting at BMO. Guys, I brought you here not to necessarily agree with me. So you tell me what's up, what we're missing, what's going on, and see if we could enlighten the audience or ourselves.
Who wants to, okay. I'll go first. I think, I mean, there's a lot to unpack with this topic, because it's something that's always fascinated us here as hiring managers, or even just as regular people, as humans, but also a lot to unpack with what you mentioned, Bruce. I think that when it comes to like the naming of it, yes, it could seem a little confusing, which is problematic to what I think some people might be referencing when using it. Obviously, work is a part of our daily life. It's very impactful on our health, which is why we need to make sure we align ourselves with healthy cultures and work that we actually love doing. But I think putting that aside, one thing that, entrepreneurs, whoever's listening, management, leadership, people that just actually want to start a business, is that if we're seeing this word and we're being bombarded by it, then I think it's, as we mentioned, it's a signal versus noise, and that we need to see how are people using this terminology and what are they actually referencing when they're talking about it. I do agree to an extent with what you said, Bruce, about responsibility. People, and I say this as myself, as someone that manages a team, in that it is someone's responsibility to ensure that, let's just say work-life balance for person A is, hey, like I have a life outside of this. This is my terminology that I'm going to use to remind you of it. I might not have kids. I might not have family, or maybe I do have a family and I also have extracurriculars, but it's a little awkward to tell my boss that I have a soccer game. So I'm going to stick to the corporate lingo that's approved now and use as work-life balance. So I think some people do like to generalize it as anything outside of work, as like a nudge or a reminder to their bosses. I agree that it is the responsibility of the individual, because having worked with individuals in the past that are struggling with time management and scheduling and sitting with them, coming up with like so many different ways to make it work, you could only do so much as someone's manager, as someone's mentor. At the end of the day, it's for them to be receptive. And if they're just naturally stressed, right? That's mental health is of like at the forefront at this point, whether it be things that are happening circumstantially, things that are happening globally, bombarded with news, just things have changed where people are just more anxious now. So I think that's woven into work-life balance, because I can change someone's schedule. I can give them and say, hey, go on vacation, do this. But if they're just naturally anxious, I can't help them. So there are things that I could say, yes, it's a responsibility of management and leadership to see when someone might not voice a concern because maybe they're a bit more introverted than most, than a few of your other team members. But there are other cases where, yes, they need to take accountability. And if people are trying to help you to be efficient, be receptive, then it's your responsibility also to pull your weight and make sure you're not stressed. And then at the end of the day, if we're doing all of this together and you're still like stressed or whatever, you're still like, that's probably, like you said, Bruce, it's like you're not aligned. You don't like the job. And I think some people have a hard time doing that. And it's always, they pin it off like management leadership. But I think you need to take accountability. Are you, is management working with you to make it better? Check. Are you actually listening to what they're saying? Are you asking questions? Check, check, check. Are you still unhappy? Yes. Well, maybe this is not the job for you, right? Maybe what you're doing is not something you want to be doing. But I think to the second point now that I'm unpacking, I'm going to say my thing and I'm going to jump because I know everyone else is eager to jump in. And obviously you're an entrepreneur. I am not by any means an entrepreneur or CEO, but I've had my share of overseeing a department, so I get it. But I think for entrepreneurs, anyone listening, it's very difficult to have an opinion on this topic when you're on the other side. And this is where I'm going to be a devil's advocate. I'm still going to keep my job, right? Spurs is here. But this is where you're on the other side of things, where it's like, it's very difficult because on the employee's end, you guys, there is always going to be a fear of loss of employment. Always fear of failure is connected to, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. I've been here for several years. I still have that anxiety whenever I screw up something, and it's not even that crazy. I just have that, that's just innate. That's my personality. And that fear creates stress, that, perhaps it's not even meant to be. It was misinterpreted. And then I come to a meeting and, Bruce, you're like, that's not even a big deal. I'm like, oh, so this entire weekend I'm thinking, oh my God, this happened. I'm going to lose my job. Da, da. And then it's not even a big deal. So I think the fear of loss is something that's fear of loss of like employment and fear of like the job security aspect is always going to play into someone's anxiety, which is why I think they might overuse the word work-life balance a bit more. And I think that's something that entrepreneurs can't always really relate to, right? Like you have the job, it's your company, it's your branding. You're, like you said, Bruce, from morning till night, this is it. Like you started this because this is literally a part of you. It's an extension of who you are, what you want to put out in the world. For some people, there might be aspects or things that they love about it, but they can never fully commit to the extent that you can, which is why they need that distinction. But in addition to that, I think that's where entrepreneurs could never relate, whether we're using the terminology appropriately or not. Let's just say people want to remind a boss that they have a life outside of work, and they use this term. It's always tricky to relate to that when you're the owner of a company. And it's always even trickier for me, right, being a director, to relate to a new employee that's like still finding their footing. They still want to, they're like, I don't want to disappoint. I don't know personalities. And they just have their own emotional stress and burden that they're bringing into the job that they might be pawning off as, or adding to the carton of like work-life balance, if that makes sense. I don't know if I lost people, but
I'm gonna add some thoughts. Should I go, or you next person wants to go? Go ahead, Veronica.
I have a few thoughts. I think that they kind of build up on what Ronza was talking about, as well as what Beirut started with. And I think that the definition of work-life balance itself is in a way like a false dichotomy. And then this is something that really made me see through Behruz's example, because Behruz, you said, well, I never had that issue because everything was, and you didn't use the exact words, but the impression that I got is that everything was so seamlessly integrated, right? Whereas you enjoyed the work that you were doing, but then you were also finding a balance or finding a way to integrate seamlessly whatever it is that you had to do in order to survive, in order to build your business, in order to grow, with what it was that you needed to stay mentally healthy, physically healthy, right? So the way that customization is going to look like for each individual, of course, is going to be different. So I think and this goes back to what Ronza was saying, is that, as a CEO, your customization to what the ideal Behruz is going to, present to the world and act in the world is going to be different than, say, Ronza, than myself, than Lindsay, than anybody really in that regard. So that's my first point. The other thing that I was thinking about also is that we also want to, going back to the dichotomy that's created by the work-life balance, which makes them appear as like opposing forces when they're not, is that you also tend to then potentially oscillate between two extremes, whereas you have like the workaholics, right, that will just completely negate all kinds of time with family, like just other responsibilities. And very often you see with like the really workaholic people is that they're sometimes either escaping or trying to get away from something, right? So then there's that extreme where it's, again, you can't necessarily say it's healthy, in some cases necessary, right? Like the biggest businesses have been built by individuals who are in that mindset, but that's a very, very small percentage of people who are able to achieve that level of success, and it requires a lot of sacrifice. So that makes sense. But then for the most part, I think most people want to be in the middle. On the other side, you have also the individuals who are so against work, not even necessarily because they don't like work, but because they see it as an impediment to, I don't know, maybe like living to the fullest, living your best life, however you want to use in terms of the lingos that go around. But you don't necessarily want to fall in this spectrum, you don't want to fall into the other spectrum. So I think I agree with the balance part, but what that balance looks to you and of course balance in terms of what is going to make you feel the most fulfilled in life, right? And that's also going to be different. So for anybody who's, for example, looking to become a doctor, we work with a lot of candidates in that field. And if you're going into this profession, you better be expecting to work 100 hours a week, right? Your job is going to be always like, okay, well, this is going to take precedence over anything that I'm like, any other commitment that I might have with my family, right? Because I might be on call all the time, right? So your partner may not necessarily be able to rely on you to just be there and show up for events, right? And that's fine, provided that you find a partner who's okay with that. Maybe they're more independent. Maybe, they're just completely dedicated to taking care of the house, right? Like that's going to be realized very differently for everybody. But, that's one possibility. Another possibility would be, as Behruz said, if you want to go and have 10 kids, then that's your priority. But raising kids, that's also a full-time job, right? And if you're having 10, that's 10 full-time jobs. So you know what I mean? Good luck balancing that. So the balance there, of course, would be, okay, well, how much do I give to my kids, which is work, versus how much time can I actually take to just, like sit down, have a glass of wine, watch a Netflix, which starts
wine. I hope you're not having wine.
That sounds like a good night.
That was like a very good night.
Eating all that stuff. No more. You see
Not
that?
for
That's the issue.
wine for me.
Wine
That's
after you put the kids to bed. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up
after, during, whatever works. Those are good points. I didn't have too much else to add. I think those are all really good ways to interpret it. I think whenever I think of work-life balance, or hearing it, especially from a hiring manager point of view, what gets me concerned, and Ronza was talking about that earlier, is more just the language around it, how it's worded, because I think that's what can cause issues with the word choice, especially I think life being, for me, the optimal, like, problematic word. And because what Behruz was saying, like, I think it's unhealthy to go down that path of thinking your work and your life are separate things. Like, I get it. Yeah. Family obligations, working out, eating out, whatever has been categorized under the word life. Could that have a different word? That would, I think, solve a lot of problems, because often what I see is people just getting too, focused on the difference of the words, thinking my work is this thing that I'm trying to get away from so I can do this thing called life. And that's my priority. And that's just going to build so much resentment for your work. It's going to make you not enjoy it. And we talked about that in previous podcasts. Your work is a majority of your day. Most of the time, it might as well be something that you enjoy. Something else I was going to say. One thing I've noticed as a hiring manager, I will add, is people's interpretation of work-life balance can be very different. And we specifically, I say that when somebody says, we say, what's your, one of your priorities, I'll say work-life balance. I say, cool. Like, what does that mean to you? Because whenever I ask this, it means something different to other, different people. And I've got some people who will be on the spectrum of, I think it's a really good to, take a break, refresh, because you come back to work stronger, refreshed, better to do your job. And I'm like, that's a really good way of putting it. I, as a hiring manager, like when they put work-life balance in that word. I've had people in the other spectrum who have said, I want to be in an environment where, if my friend calls me in the middle of the day wanting to go to the beach or hang out, I want to just get up and go. I'm like, yeah, it's quite far on the other side. So sometimes I think work-life balance really just means flexibility. And I like that wording better than the word work-life balance. And I think that's totally okay and we've always had that. So I never really worry about it. Is yes, we want people working, at an optimal time for them, because that's when they're the most productive. And, I've had people that I've worried about because they've, been on a schedule that, for example, is kind of later in the day. And I've worried, oh gosh, they're not going to like that after a while. And it turns out that was perfect for them because they're somebody who, likes to get up and go to the gym first thing in the morning and go shopping and then do their work in the evening, because that's when they start mentally, peaking and they're more concentrated on their work. So I think people having that flexibility of what works best for them to be able to do errands, I'm not going to say the word life because I don't like it, errands, etc., and their work.
So I actually had a funny story about work-life balance. We had a company that held, and keep in mind, I was struggling so much. I was trying to find a place to live, and I'd already communicated this, and I was using my lunchtime to scope out places. And we kept having meetings and workshops about work-life balance during lunch. And I just posed the question of, I just find it a little ironic. Why are we having work-life balance during lunch? I and I didn't go into the specifics, but I actually got pulled in. I got written up for asking that question. And I literally was like, I'm using my lunch to find apartments. I live an hour and a half away. I'm doing the best I can. I just
my life now.
I'm voice my questions because you're saying be transparent, but I got written up. And then I think at the time I was just advised, well, why didn't you tell your story? I'm like, I didn't feel the need to go into personal specifics. So yeah, sometimes you might just have terrible toxic cultures. And I think that's what people's misconception of work-life balance just gets reinforced. And then they go to a new company and they come with the same mentality and their guns are blazing and they're ready to fight. And the new company's like, what? We don't do the same thing here. So I think it's very important for people to first identify what does that mean when people are saying work-life balance?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of the problem, that example you gave. They took it the wrong way. Like you said, hey, work-life balance, lunchtime. And they were just like, oh my God, she wants to go whatever at her lunchtime. What a bad employee.
Every lunchtime.
And I totally see the irony. And I think, you don't have to, divulge personal details about what you're doing, but that's where there needs to be a way of, the example I gave earlier about how one person will say work-life balance and it can mean two very, very different things. Yeah, one person does want to go to the beach halfway through the day. Another person wants that time to refresh and get back on track. And those are totally different things to me, that I would obviously lean more towards the person who seems, like Bruce talking about, more organized and like Lulu was talking about, more realistic to okay, yeah, that sounds nice, but you've got to be realistic. So that's where communication comes in really important.
100%. You have to, because it means something. Look, I right then and there, I wasn't even taking a break. I was just running.
Yeah. But they the wrong way. They thought, okay, she wants to go lie down.
She wants, She wants a nap.
She's gonna go have a nap. And they shouldn't do that either. Like, again, you don't have to give personal information. They shouldn't be so heated the other way. There needs to be a middle ground of like, okay, I hear you. What does that mean?
Yeah,
For
like
you?
at least get that communication going. And I think that's the biggest piece is you have some companies that are too crazy with like they're pushing work-life balance and they're not stopping to think, well, why are people arguing for it? Like, are you not offering resources? Like, what's going on? Like, why aren't you, you shouldn't have to create a whole program for work-life balance
Yeah.
and encourage, like it's kind of really counterproductive a little bit, right? So it's, yeah.
It should be a more natural thing. Yeah. And the other thing I just wanted to say about the two things you guys said at the end there about entrepreneurs, and I get what you're saying once about employees and that insecurity, like you'll always feel as an employee. I get that. Yeah, but what Bruce said as well is a different insecurity you have. I'm not going to call myself an entrepreneur because I don't consider myself that, but I'm a business owner.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I just consider that different. But yeah, there's a different insecurity you feel as a business owner that never ever goes away. Yeah, you don't shut off at the 5 o'clock or end of the day. It's just I've accepted that fate for my life. This will be it for the rest of my life as long as I have a business. I will never be free from, can I meet payroll at the end of the month? Is this person happy? There's a million things that just never, you can't go on vacation I've never in my history been on a vacation for a few days and something not happen or somebody not need something. And I'm not complaining at all. It's just my duty as the way I see it, but it's just a different, because anything could happen. Like you've got now people, every single person in the company watching you, relying on you. So you think that you mess up and you worry the weekend. If I mess up, that's everybody's job. Like that's a lot.
I still have that insecurity as like a manager, right? Like a lot of that. Mine was always on my team's health. Like, are they good? Are they enjoying? But I think we've talked about this, like being able to differentiate from what I'm responsible for and what my team members, I could only guide them, help them. But there's got to be a cutoff where it's like, at the end of the day, you got to enjoy this. And like Bruce said, you have to learn how to organize your time. Like I can only sit down with you, show you, but it got to a point like, yeah, my work-life balance was interrupted because I was so worried about other people's work-life balance. And it was just so, remember, we had so many conversations of like, people are happy. I want to make sure I'm not overwhelming them. And then I was overwhelming them by constantly checking in to see if they're okay. And they're like, annoyed. So it's just having to find that balance also.
The assumption is you're a mature adult.
Yeah.
At least at the companies we work at. You are responsible about how you feel about anything. You're also responsible about telling people if you feel like something has to change, etc. After that, if the boss is an asshole, then is an asshole. Not before. If the boss is unaware, you're an idiot for thinking they have sixth sense.
I think that's opposing point, yeah.
And again, I'll go back on the other side as well, employer. I have seen employers who are idiots. Like I know someone who's asked this of me. How do you manage work-life balance? I ended the conversation because I wasn't interested anymore. You're an employer, you have a responsibility. What work-life balance? Take care of your employees, you hired them, make sure they get paid, make sure they get paid well. Then if you have time, that is the balance. Balance? What balance? I thought you liked this. This is balance. So it goes both ways. I've seen idiots on both sides, not just one or the other. And
but it is
not good to have idiots either side.
It is a sweet balance. Like obviously managing and overseeing a team for a long time, it doesn't matter how accommodating, adaptable, super supportive, annoyingly to that point I am, I'll still have people on the other end that will complain about this or complain about that. And I think it's very important at that point to recognize that people align. And now that was a fault that I had made in the past, like, trying to retain people and that weren't aligned. So
here's the other thing. Here's the other one that is very, I'm going to go on the employee side. Somebody says, hey, I want to be a XYZ, like they want to progress. Okay, you want to be that. You're not there. You understand that? Yes. Okay, so we got to do some training, but I'm going to give you my time, which is obviously the most valuable thing at BMO, because I could be doing something else. You get training for free. However, you got to do the work. You still got to do your job, your current job, until you have the other job. You're cool with that? Yes. I'm overwhelmed. It's so hard. I thought you said you wanted to be this other thing. So you have to do both for a little while. Don't come and say work-life balance and I want to be a manager, director, chief executive. If you're not there, how do you get there? You got to put in the time and effort. Like, it's like going to Michael Jordan and say, oh, I want to play just like you. Okay, you want to play just like me? This was my routine. 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. I dribbled the ball. Let's go. Work-life balance. You're an idiot.
Yeah. But I think
expectations are not realistic.
Yeah.
Actions are not aligned with. That's when frustrations happen on both employer and employee. Actually, those are like the, because the person, especially this happens for usually younger employees or inexperienced, they don't understand the amount of work required to get that to that next stage, and they're like working 6 hours a day, work-life balance, and then you're like, oh, I gave you this exercise for this. Have you done it? No. Have you done it? No. And then 6 months later, oh, when am I going to get promoted? Well, did you do any of the stuff I gave you? No. Why should you get promoted? Do you know how to do them? No. Then why? I've been here for a long time. It's not about time. Can you do the work? You know, we've had, you could have somebody be a janitor for a long time. That's it. They're a janitor for a long time. That is it. They're not going to be the CEO of the company. Unless they could actually do the work. How do you get to do the work? You got to put in the time. What about work-life balance, Peruz? Well, what do you want? You know your priorities. Optimize to that. Nobody says you should do one way or another. The other problem with thing is, like, you know, again, LinkedIn or like government, etc. They want to regulate this, which is really good. It's good for employees because employees need to have that sort of protection, which I agree with, Ranza. You said in most situations, employee doesn't have an option. They could get fired. Employer cannot get fired. Most circumstances, not always. So you want to do that, but these regulations are overcompensating too much usually. It's just overcompensation. They keep doing that, and then everybody starts acting up, like being weird. Like all of a sudden, people don't even work their 9 to 5. They start working like 9 to 3, so quiet quitting. And then, well, you get fired, and then they're like, oh my God, they fired me because I want to work. No, you were not doing your job. They fired you. You weren't doing the bare minimum even. But that's the other thing that usually interferes.
People will abuse it, right? Some people will jump on, like we've talked about this before with quiet quitting, whatever trend is happening, you'll have the people that jump on and will abuse it and will use it in different circumstances to get ahead or get what they want, unfortunately. Yeah. But I will say that when it comes to work-life balance, that a lot of times if it is dependent on the person and just them holding themselves accountable, I think it's just at that point, when I've seen it in my experience, it's just like ensuring a healthy, like a good mental health. And that usually comes from other things, right? Like seeking the right individuals, learning how to have coping strategies. And that's, that's honestly not the responsibility of an employer. So I think that's something that people need to remember, that if people are
constantly. I'll give you another example. Somebody complained to me, hey, I'm really overworked. I don't even have time to exercise. So I asked, what time do you get up? 9:30. What time you start work? 10. What time you end the day? I don't know, 7 or 8. Okay, well, why don't you just get up at like 9? From 9 to 9:30, you could work out at least. Okay, 8. If it was me, I would get up way earlier, by the way. So again, it's organization skills, in appropriate expectations, and then you got media taking advantage of this. You got government always overcompensating, and you got government jobs. By the way, why are government jobs? Remember, I talked about the scam and the controls. It comes from the government. The Industrial Revolution was the government was organizing all that. They brought a scientist to figure all that out. It was sanctioned by the government. And here is why: when you go to a government job, it's so structured. They literally ring the bell, so you go have lunch. ring the bell, come out. Why? Because it's not their money. They don't care. It's taxpayers' money. They could do all that stuff. Then they want to impose that on somebody else, and it just doesn't make sense. Again, I'm not necessarily saying that people should be overworked. I never said that anywhere in this episode. But it's all coming from people, and the idiots who are trying to impose this are people who have zero skin in the game. They don't understand how to be an employee or an employer. They're neither. Imagine that. Government is neither an employee or an employer. They get free money, whether they do a good job or do a bad job. That's the definition of someone who has zero skin in the game. So message at the end is, if you want to do really well in life, become the government. Then you have all the work-life balance in the world and free money.
I feel like, no, I do not endorse.
No. If you're having issues with work-life balance, it is first and foremost your own responsibility. It is likely that you don't understand what your own personal priorities are. You don't know how to balance different elements, balance in quotation, different elements of your life. You know, some people like to dedicate their life to their work. Some people want to raise 10 kids. Some people want to go drinking all day long. I don't recommend it. Definitely not that at all. But what is that thing? Find that and optimize for that. If you don't have balance, it is your fault. First and foremost, you're just a bad organizer. 2, you don't understand your own priorities. And now you're lashing out at your employer, your colleagues, your manager, first and foremost, it's your own fault. Secondly, it's the fault of the culture that was imposed by the Industrial Revolution to try to control workers, to put them into these categorizations. It is so hard to shake off, as hard as it is to shake off 9 to 5. Like, why do people work 9 to 5? It makes no sense. When you understand history, you understand it's coming from Industrial Revolution. Why 9 to 5? Why not 10 to 6? Why not 11? Like, it just makes no sense. 9 o'clock is not even the time the sun rises most of the time. It has no basis. So I think my message is, when you're having issues, look inwards first. 2, if you're an employee, once you've looked inwards, you understand your priority, and if it's a really balanced and like you have an asshole boss that's being very demanding and like you feel like a prisoner, just go talk to somebody. Maybe they could help you out. But again, the onus is on you. You got to talk to somebody, right? People will not know. They don't have a sixth sense. Most people don't. Maybe me and Ronza might have, but we don't actually. It's very rare. Nobody does.
Varies.
Nobody, it's like comical because nobody does. If you don't speak up, we will not do. No, and then you're gonna start being weird at work and not doing the work and quiet quitting, all that stuff. And guess what? They're gonna loudly fire you, and then you won't even know what the heck happened here. All I wanted was work-life balance in my life. No, you were just a bad organizer, and you didn't know your priority. You started acting up. You weren't doing your job. You got fired. For entrepreneurs, if you want work-life balance, now here's a huge deal for me. If I hear that from an entrepreneur, I don't even want to talk to them anymore. Because you have a responsibility when you have opened a business for 3 things. You personally must do very well in your life. You're sacrificing way too much. The company has to do very well. Your employees have to do very well. You're responsible for all those 3 things. The minute you say, oh, I miss my, hanging out with my friends, going on vacation, you don't even understand what an entrepreneur is. And you've, again, optimized to the wrong thing. You don't know your priority. You're a bad organizer. And you know what? Because you're a business person and you started and now you're playing with other people's lives, I'm going to go one level more than an employee. I'm going to say you're actually a bad person. Don't come close to us. We don't want to hang out with you. We don't want to buy your products. Don't even watch entrepreneurcorner.com. Don't leave us a comment. Everybody else, if you enjoyed this, thanks so much for watching. Definitely share it with a friend who may need help with their work-life balance, and subscribe on whatever social media channel you're watching this, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Until next time.